And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. Governor Katie Hobbs is off to Taiwan and South Korea to talk trade. Here to discuss that with us is Danny Siden, the president and CEO of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much. And one of the first questions, you always get when you see governors, and I should say, first of all, you're an interesting perspective because you've worked in the governor's office before.
Yes,
so you've got experience with the executive arts. Now you're, leading the Arizona Chamber of Commerce. And one of the first questions I always get when governors go overseas on these kinds of trade missions is like, oh, isn't this just a junket? How important are these trade missions? I mean, does governor really need to go to Taiwan, South Korea to improve trade there? And if so, how does that help?
So first of all, thanks for having me on. And I do have that perspective. I've been on these trips on behalf of the governor, and I've been on behalf of the business community, and they are very important. We're very excited to see Governor Hobbs go to visit Taiwan and South Korea. And let me just give you some numbers. In our world, we measure everything with return on investment. Mm-hmm. So what do you get in return? Well, last March, Governor Hobbs announced that Arizona was now the #1 country in the nation for foreign direct investment. And in large part, that's because of two major announcements. The first was TSMC announcing a $40 billion total expansion here in Arizona. That's $40 billion, right? That's 2 years worth of state budgets plus some. And then LG, which is a South Korean company, announced the largest North American battery plant in history at $5.5 billion down in the East Valley as well. So that's $45 billion right there in announcements from these two countries. And these trips are important because these countries want to know who they're working with. They want to know what the regulatory environment is. They want to know that you're working with someone who's going to help them cut through the issues or problems that might come up. And Arizona has that reputation as a state. So I'm so excited to see her there, and she's going to do great things and bring back even more announcements. Yeah,
I was going to say, what kind of deliverables, as they say, can she bring back from a trip like this? Is this something immediate, or is this something that plays out in the long term?
I think the first trip to Taiwan for the Arizona governor's office dates back to Governor Brewer. I think she started back in 2013, if I remember right. So sometimes these things take a while, but $40 billion is worth it. That's worth that time. That's worth that investment. It's worth that relationship building. And, it's not just the governor. I should say that the legislature has appropriated for trade offices now as well. I think they just added 5 new ones. So they recognize, as the appropriators, the value in international trade and foreign direct investment. I mean, we're competing globally, Dennis. Germany just announced a new incentive program for semiconductors, trying to compete directly with Arizona, who's now the global leader for semiconductors. So it's an exciting time to be doing this. And the deliverables really are these relationships, the continued investment, the continued commitment to investment. And I think we're going to see a lot more announcements coming from the supply chain and the reshoring.
Yeah, and let's talk about another important, I think, element right now with the business community, which of course is the heat. So obviously, I think we're on the back end, knock on wood. There's no wood on this desk, but if there was some, knock on wood, that we're on the backside of the summer. We're heading into the cooler months and into the fall. But we're coming out of a historic summer, record heat wave with a record number of days in a row of over 110 degrees, whatnot. I've got to imagine that that's not a good selling point for business in Arizona when you're seeing headlines like this, because these aren't local headlines. These are headlines, CNN, New York Times. Internationally talking about, like, look at this crazy place. Why do people live there? That's got to be a tough PR market for businesses to operate, for states to try to compete and recruit businesses here, right?
It is. But it also gives us a chance to showcase some of the things we're best at. So let me just start. Breaking news, Dennis. It gets hot in Arizona in July. It's nothing new, right?
I know, but this was different. This summer was different.
The hottest summer in 100 years. But you know what happened in June, right before July? It was the coolest June for over a decade. So you don't report that. We didn't get national headlines. I get it. We're working against that narrative here. But yes, it's always gotten hot in July. But you know what doesn't happen? We're one of, I think, the top 2 states for grid reliability. Your power didn't go out. My power didn't go out. We did not have any major outages because of the planning of companies like Arizona Public Service, APS, SRP, TEP, Southwest Gas, and then the people we don't thank even nearly enough, the Corporation Commission, who works with those utilities to make sure these months are planned for. So Leah Marquez Peterson, if you see her, give her a thank you, because your AC stayed on. No one's ACs were turned off by SRP or APS. Southwest Gas is keeping the factories going with their gas. And you know what? That didn't happen in Texas, Oklahoma. Major outages all around the country, not here in Arizona. So it gives us a showcase what we do well.
Yeah, but it's got to be tough, like when you're seeing those heats, because it is super hot there. And when you start seeing that stuff, if this continues year after year, that's got to be something you got to be concerned about.
I'm always concerned with how the national media reports in Arizona. They tend to get some things wrong. They get water wrong for us all the time. When they talk about our heat, they make it sound like it's an affront to humanity that we're out here surviving and thriving in the desert. But you know what? We are. And we're going to continue to do so. We're going to continue to be this innovative, amazing place to come work, live, play, raise a family, start a business. And the heat, it's just something that makes you, builds into your character a little bit. But I'll say this again. If there is innovative solutions on how to manage it, it's going to come from Arizona. And every summer is different. We know this. You've lived here long enough. You know that. Back in 2021, it was an unusually cool summer, and we had an unusually high amount of water. So every year brings something different. The thing that is not different is Arizona's utilities keep the power running. Corporation Commission plans for it.
Well, I believe some of the hottest summers on record have happened over the past 10 years. Or something like that. Yeah. So it is getting hotter here. You said heat builds character. Well, I, for one, have had enough character for this summer.
No denial. We've had hotter summers than we've had before. And I think, again, the best way to respond is through innovation and technology and taking advantage of good planning.
Okay, and now before we go, I do want to hit you up on this. This is a very important issue. This is one that is concerning everybody. And I want to talk about housing. Not only, this has been ground zero for some of the most, skyrocketing housing costs in the country. Yeah. You've been here long enough. You remember, though, and it was pretty cheap to live here. It is not that way anymore. It can be quite expensive to live here in the city. In fact, we aired a recent story here on this station showing that, most police and firefighters in the city of Phoenix can't afford to buy a home right now. Yeah. That is can't be a good business environment. Again, recruiting new businesses here. Why do they want to come there and bring their employees there to places that they may not be able to afford to buy a house in? How are you dealing with that?
So you're correct. We've experienced tremendous growth in Arizona. And it's not a secret why housing prices have gone up. It's an issue of supply and demand. We don't have enough supply for the demand of everyone moving here. So how are we handling it? We've tried multiple times at the legislature to get a statewide approach to address housing. It falters, mainly because there's a challenge from who's in charge of the cities or state. But we need a statewide plan on this going forward. And again, the question isn't, should we regulate more? Should we try something that's failed in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Denver, like price controls or rent control? We need to build more. And we need to clear the way so people can build more. And we do have the water to do that. And we do have 80,000 permits outstanding. We need to speed these things up.
Phoenix has got the water.
Phoenix has got the water. The state has the water. We can build houses here. We'll solve this through simple supply and demand. And I'll tell you this too, Des. Other states that have seen high increases, especially with interest rates, having a hard time selling houses, the private sector has really answered it. We have companies buying down interest rates, helping people get into their first home. I think we'll see a lot of that going on here. All right. Well, that's all the time. Danny Siden, the CEO, President of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce. Always a pleasure talking with you. Thanks for stopping by. And up now.